Welcome to People of Everything. I always say this show that's a bit like Desert Island Discs, but rather than bring music, I ask my guests to bring the 5 people that have shaped the person they are. But we are in bonus season, so I'm going to do something different again this week. What I'm doing this week is I am doing a compilation of firsts, as in the people who are chosen first. So, you know the format, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So who people choose as the first person they want to talk about. And it's been fascinating going back over the seasons and saying and hearing again who people prioritize. And everybody's very clear. They go, oh, it's not in any particular order and this, that, and the other, but kind of it is, isn't it? The one you talk about first does have some sort of meaning. So I'm really looking forward to sort of sharing this with you. What I'm going to do is between each guest, I'm going to do a little setup and reflection. So you will hear me again come back to you between each one. But in between, you're going to hear my guests from season 1 talking about their firsts. So, sit back, enjoy. And here it is, people's firsts. So first up, we have Mark McCartney. Mark actually should be first talking about his first because he was my first podcast that I'd ever been on. He's got a podcast called What is a Good Life? And me appearing on that led to me doing, People Are Everything. It kind of inspired me to do this. And of course, I had to then make Mark my first guest. So he chooses to speak about his mum. It's a very, very warm homage to his relationship. Very revealing of the man he is. So, very fitting that he's chosen his mum as his first.
But the first one's very clear, and that's my mother. My mum was a school teacher, and then she was also a single mother and raised 3 of us by herself, obviously with the help of some family members as well. But yeah, she's incredibly influential on me. And the older we get now, while I think because we're both quite strong characters, I think at times, we know where our boundaries are with each other. So it's kind of become a lovely friendship at this point. She's obviously still my mother, but I was just back in Ireland last week, and I don't really feel that thing where some people point to sometimes as it's uncomfortable to go back to the family home because they're your parents and this and that. I just have amazing conversations with her at this point, and I can start to appreciate more of our similarities and kind of cherish them, as opposed to what I think sometimes happens when we're growing up. If you have a similar parent or sibling, that can also be the point of conflict, or when you're not aware of who you are, you don't even notice how similar you are and how you're seeing things so similarly. But she's an amazing person from the point of view of, like, she's just how loving she is. She's also tough, but she's like just a big softie as well. So it's just a combination of all of those things. And for all that she clearly prioritized with us, it's just someone who I feel like immense gratitude and love for.
And do you get that feeling of, like, when you say about going home, that like just being with her is like being home, like where you feel your fullest, most comfortable self and can express yourself, exactly how you feel in that moment?
Yeah, like I think that's become a big priority in my life in pretty much all settings at this point. But especially at home, like there's a comfort, there's a quality based on the household that she built and the emotion within it as well, that just I can relax into very, very quickly. Like
I like that.
Do you know what I mean? Like it going home feels like I don't know, putting on a nice pair of slippers.
Yeah,
it's just, and I'm not trying to make something sound perfect, because I think we do that with families a lot, and even with partners, we try to idealize certain things. It's not like everything is just continuously a bed of roses, but particularly going back there as an adult, and now even going back there because I haven't lived in Ireland for 15 years. Going back there with now my own child as well. I don't know, it's just, it feels like an immensely, I don't know, comfortable, loving, and kind of safe haven from the world. And plus, she gets on amazingly well with my wife, and we're all quite like similar in certain different ways. So it just feels like a really relaxed time.
And does she know all this? Have you told her?
Yeah. I think like my wife and mother are they're very different in some ways, but they're quite similar in some other ways. And I think they're both well used to like kind of a barrage of words and like when I send my mother birthday cards, I usually include like a long letter within it, which kind of outlines all of this, and I think which probably makes my mum a little bit uncomfortable and unhappy, I'm sure. And I'd say the same thing I afford my wife as well, who just kind of goes, I'm not really a wordy person. So that's generally how it's received.
Do you know what? I'm just laughing to myself because I have a lovely relationship with my son, but I was teasing him the other day that, like, if I text him, I might text him something quite important, could be a lengthy text. And his latest thing, I don't know if his latest thing, he's always done it. He communicates in the funniest of ways. So it's either a one-word answer or his latest thing is to put FR, which for ages I thought, what does that even mean? And apparently it's for real. For real, for real, for real. I'm like, so I think that's a yes. I think it just means yes, but in his speak. But I'd like to think, gosh, I'd love it if years from now he was to kind of be on a podcast and say nice things about me. Oh, I'm going to work hard to get that, see what I can do. Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, I have mum envy, as you know, because we had a chat about my background back in the day. So when I hear about the sort of coziness and warmth and comfort of people's mothers, I get a bit gooey. I like it. And next we have another Mark, which is Mark Hobra, my Geordie friend with his beautiful Geordie voice. And he was from season 1 also. And what do I love about Mark? Well, many things, but we talk about it a bit in this first segment, which is his sort of quiet authority. He's very calming. And as you'll come to hear, he chose first his granddad. And I mean, I don't know his granddad, but I know Mark. And the way he talks about his granddad, you can see exactly why he was such a big influence. So yeah, here we go. This is Mark Hobra. Get this right. Too many Marks in my life. Mark Hobra talking about his granddad. So I'm really intrigued to know who your 5 are. So let's get into it. Let's get into number 1. Tell me who's
the one. It's I should explain just a little bit, I guess, that when you asked me who the 5 people were, it's really tempted. I'm really tempted. I suppose anybody would be to kind of immediately go towards family. And Stan, my wife, and I, we have this thing where we talk about our biological family, but we also talk about our logical family, which is one that perhaps you would choose if. Or just the people that you're flung together with, they become like family, and they are what we call our logical family. So we have 2. We're very lucky. We have a biological family and a logical family. And I've kind of gone for a bit of both in here. So the first person I've chosen to do, I'm going to show you, is my granddad. There he is. So yeah, my granddad's called Kenneth, and lived all of his life in the kind of Colchester, Clacton-on-Sea, Frinton-on-Sea, that Essex area. I think it's that thing, I guess, where grandchildren and grandparents, I think, have quite a special relationship. And it's not the same as a relationship that you would have with a parent. And I was very close to Grandad. And I just have these very fond memories of him. I never saw him without a shirt and tie, apart from once I watched him shaving in the morning. He had this electric razor that he would shave with. But he was the most dignified man I think I've ever met. Just lovely. I don't think I ever heard him raise his voice. And I don't think I ever heard him have a bad word to say about anybody. And he just kind of lived his life, it's that back in the day where I feel that him and my grandmother signed a pledge. I think he was teetotal. So I don't think I've got that gene from him at all. But yeah, he was lovely, and he used to tell this story about, and again, there was a theme running through a lot of this, which is a bit of a health thing. But my grandfather had various health issues as well, and he always tells this thing about, he was probably about the age I am now, and he had a stomach cancer, I think. And I wasn't allowed to go in and see him, but I do have a memory of going and being taken into this hospital and being a bit kind of freaked out as a small child. And I'm made to sit outside this room. And I don't remember this bit, but he used to tell me, he said, "Oh, you shouted, 'Get well, Grandad,' because he wasn't allowed in the room." And he said that gave him the strength to go, all right, and I will, because,
oh, what a lovely, and also lovely you told you that.
I watched him. He was when I was going through the early part of the music industry and stuff, he was a constant there. And my grandmother died when I was at university, and my grandfather lived a while after that. But he was kind of always there. He was always that constant. He used to call me my boy all the time. That was it, my boy. And I think I got a lot from him in terms of, you talk about, I'd never thought myself as being particularly calm, but other people might do. Maybe that side's come from my granddad, because I think he was, nothing really seemed to faze him. He would quietly contemplate things, and he would just talk. And I don't think I ever saw him without a shirt and tie and a jacket on. It's even at the weekend. At the weekend he might have made a concession and rolled his sleeves up of his shirt or something like that. But that's about it.
But our generation, that's it. I can picture many people from, not necessarily my life, but indirectly, that, sometimes in 3-piece suits. You never saw them out of a 3-piece suit, and it's like a point of pride, with a kind of, as I say, daily shaving, always well turned out. It's like a generation that's image of that.
Kind of jumpers without the sleeves, the tank top.
The tank tops, yeah,
and everything,
love it.
But yeah, just a really gentle, dignified man.
Yeah,
I think maybe it was a sense of, I'm kind of processing it, talking to you about it, but it's probably that sense of kind of, it's all right, Grandad's there. He's got this.
Yeah. Calm authority, just like keeping you. Nothing bad's going to happen because Grandad's in the room. Yeah, and I know what you mean by that generational thing. This is like a bit random, but here's a guilty pleasure I'm going to share with you now, Mark, and then share with lots of people now. I do love a Wimpy. I love a Wimpy. Oh, that brown derby with all the ice cream and everything, and we've got one locally here, and I think it's like literally one of my favorite places to go, because it's run by this really lovely family, and it's immaculately clean, like the cleanest. Like literally, you want to come out of their toilets and compliment them and say, "These are the cleanest toilets you've ever seen." And they're always so cheerful, and you get all walks of life, because it's just right in the middle of the high street. And I think, secretly deep down, we all love a Wimpy. Well, love a Wimpy. So, and I was in one the other day, and there was this grandson, probably teens, I'd say, with his grandma, and the affection between them and the ease between them. And I remember they just caught my eye. I was looking over, and it just warmed my heart. I was like, yeah, that's a very special relationship.
It really is. And I sometimes wonder whether with a grandparent, they can actually, I don't know, almost regress back to being a little kid, which they couldn't do when they're a parent, because they're responsible for the child. But I wonder a little bit whether regrets and kind of go, now, can we a bit? My grandmother, on my mum's side, not my dad. This is my dad's dad, but on my mum's side, Edith, she was incredible, because she used to take us scrumping and stuff. We had no money when we were kids, and so my mum would go out to work. My grandma, who lived down the road, would sometimes come and look after us. And my mum would come back, and there'd be kind of, apples, apple pies, apple turnover, toffee, but whatever. But and she's going, where'd you get all this? And and my grandma would be going like, yeah, and because she would take us out kind of people's gardens, and she'd be sitting there with some kind of a basket and sending us in there to throw sticks at trees to get the apples down to bring back so that she could. So yeah, but yeah, that was my regressing back to being, come on, we're all kids together. I'm your grandma, but I'm a child with you at heart. It's great.
And the scrumping's a bit of a forgotten time thing as well, isn't it? Because we live in such a world of abundance that you can get like 40 different apple types if you walk into the supermarket. But when we were kids, Mark, I think we're roughly the same age, scrumping was a thing. That and getting conkers this time of year. But scrumping was a real thing, like that you did so that you could have apple pie. I mean, it wasn't just for the fun of it, although it was fun. So, okay, well, I'm glad he's made number one on your list. He sounds like a good gent. And now we have Alex. And Alex also chose to speak about her granddad. And a very, very inspirational one at that. You'll hear in a moment, she talks about her upbringing and how proud her mum was about her father. And it's such an unexpected story. So I'm not going to give too much away because Alex is an amazing storyteller. So I think you just need to sit back and enjoy this one. This is Alex talking about her granddad.
So the first person, I guess, who really shaped me is somebody who I never actually met. That would be my maternal grandfather, whose name was Leslie Pearmain. Yeah, a bit of a funny old name. Apparently, the name Pearmain, he kind of changed. I think his name was Pearman, and he poshed it up. So if you look up Pearmain in the directory, there's only a few of them because it's actually a bit of a made-up name that he kind of thought Pearman is a bit ordinary, and he thought, yeah, obviously had a sort of thing of not being quite good enough, so he poshed it up and made it into Pearmain, which does sound quite unusual or maybe even a bit continental, I think. But yeah. So he was born at the turn of the century and just only really narrowly missed serving in World War I. And he died in the 1960s, lung cancer, and I was born in 1974, so I never got to meet him. But he was someone who my mother spoke about constantly and often with great pride and love that I could sort of almost shone out of her when she spoke about him. So to give you the context, I'm the last of 5 children, and we grew up in a very small 3-bedroom council flat in an estate in Heston, which for those of you who don't know is really in the arse end. It's really the arse end of Heathrow Airport. So there were 7 people, 1 dog, 1 cat, and an assortment of pet rodents, and I think even a goldfish at one stage. And so my sort of family growing up environment was quite crowded, quite chaotic, and often quite stressful. Though a very working class, quite a poor environment really, where people worked very hard, but those around me didn't have a lot of hope for things improving or changing. And many of the people in my immediate environment didn't have a lot of self-agency. So it was really an atmosphere of scarcity, lack and longing without there being a lot of hope to move out of that environment or better the situation. So where I lived, people didn't go on to university, or even a lot of the time they didn't even make it to 16 in schooling terms, No one in my family had gone beyond 16. My eldest sister left at 15. My other sister left at 30. So there wasn't really anyone to model self-agency or betterment or aspiration. But being the youngest, I went everywhere with my mum, and she often had my ear. So she talked about her own father's impoverished start in life all the time. And he was really the only inspiration that I had as somebody who had kind of made good. And I guess that was my mum's way of teaching me that it could happen, even though there were no examples around me. She was sort of teaching me that it was possible and that someone in our own family had already done this before. So Leslie Pearmain was born to his mother out of wedlock with no father at a time in history where there were no benefits or no support for women who found themselves in that situation. So he started work probably as a teenager, really, as a bin man in the West Ham district of East London. And yeah, he would have been a teenager, but quickly his superiors sort of noticed a kind of talent with him, and put him forward for a shop steward position in the union, the bin men. And he just really ran with that opportunity and took on more training and more education for that role. And basically he rose through the ranks of trade unionism to become the general secretary of the Transport and Workers Union.
Oh, wow.
And he broke a lot of strikes in the 50s and 60s. And in the 1950s, he received an Order of the British Empire, an OBE, for his work in resolving union conflict with employers and keeping industry going through the war years, through the Second World War, when it was really needed. So even though I'd work in quite an impoverished environment, my mum was always keen to point out that her upbringing was very middle class, and that she just unfortunately slid back down the class ladder when she'd married my dad. So it was kind of, I think it was hearing about him that kind of it really was like a little ray of light that allowed us to to know that it was possible, to know that this wasn't who we were. And that's quite an interest, talking earlier about generational trauma, but it also works the other way, doesn't it?
Yeah, generational inspiration.
Yeah.
But I can just picture that, really. It's like, and storytelling being so powerful, like even within a very sort of intimate, small, direct family, that those stories, they enter your body and soul and mind, and you go, I could do that. And you must have been so proud hearing those stories. Like, yeah, it would have made you feel something, and maybe thinking, I'd like to be that person. I'd like to be someone who's talked well of by generations to come.
Yeah. And my mum was almost obsessed about, particularly in the later years of her life, she died in 2021, that in the last years of her life, she's so obsessed with ancestry and tracing family trees. I mean, it used to drive me nuts. And I used to sit and listen to these sort of endless stories about family, and sort of almost feel like I know them all inside out, really. But then as soon as she left, she almost like passed it on to me. So it was sort of like left as that. Now I kind of got a similar obsession with where I came from and what that meant, and kind of richness of that. Maybe it's a getting old thing. It's not. I don't think it's something that really you're that aware of when you're younger. Something that you make meaning of as you get older.
Oh, definitely. I mean, my kids couldn't care less about my backstory or my ancestors. Literally. I've written a blooming book, Alex. They won't read it. It's like they just won't, because they're not. It's all I don't know. I guess it's all ahead of them, and maybe it's slightly behind us. And you get a sense of time and ancestry, and I don't know. Maybe you just get deeper meaning as you get older. But again, back to the storytelling thing. Before paper, this is how we did it, right? We just talked to each other in small groups and kept the stories going. And I know in some cultures, what do they say? You die twice, once when you actually die and once when no one speaks your name anymore. So, that's your mum's way of making sure Leslie was spoken about, I guess. And next we have Jasper Reed, who's also chosen to speak about a grandparent, has his number one choice. So in his case, it's his grandma, Margaret. And as you come to hear, she is a hugely influential, formative carer for him, an investor in him. And what a remarkable character, a remarkable woman. So I hope you enjoy this one. But right now, under pressure from me, let's get into it. So who is your number one? Tell me who that is.
Well, so I'm going to do this I guess that's the other question: is in what order should people be? I'm probably doing, I imagine, what a lot of people do. I'm just going to do them chronologically from sort of when I was younger to now. So let me open up with my grandmother on my father's side, Margaret Reed. And again, it was interesting here. I mean, I think there were very strong arguments to choose my father or my mother. I chose my grandmother, Margaret, for a few reasons. Margaret, known as Peggy, as, you know, the old... I think lots of international listeners or viewers might be intrigued at how Margaret becomes Peggy. It's just...
I know a Peggy, same thing. But how does that work?
How does it happen? I don't know. In the same way that actually the most Jaspers that people know tend to be black Labradors, not people. Maybe it's the same strange logic. Anyway, Margaret Reed, Granny, Margaret Reed. I mean, she died, I suppose, 20-something years ago, 30 years ago, at a decent age. So a woman of that vintage, a woman born before the First World War, who lived through the Second World War, at the beginning of which my father was born. So a woman of that age. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that she sticks in my mind is, I mean, we all grow up and grow older in ages that change quite quickly. And every generation thinks that their generation has developed more than the previous generation. I mean, I think there is a strong argument that what has happened in my lifetime is quite dramatically different to what happened in Margaret Reed's lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so I had a very close relationship with her, not least because my father's a soldier, and so we moved around everywhere. So that was a peripatetic life. It was also a life that involved a lot of time at boarding school. And because of boarding school, you know, my parents might live in Cyprus or in the United States, whatever. I was at boarding school from a young age, from just before 8 years old. And so my grandmother, who lived in Edinburgh in Scotland, and then later on the Isle of Wight, was a guardian of sorts, right, for when you were in the UK. And these were the days when, unlike now, I mean, I have friends who live overseas with children at boarding schools in the UK. And as far as I can see, either the parents are constantly in the UK, they actually live in Hong Kong or Dubai or whatever, or the children are constantly in Hong Kong or Dubai. But this, of course, is in the context of the boarding school world where you were dropped off and picked up, right? And there's no question that your parents would be flying over. So Margaret was the person who would pick me up at airports. She was the person I would go to half term with. So I had quite a bit to do with her, possibly more than you would have to do with you. In a funny way, maybe more than people have to do with their grandparents now. I don't know. So now the reason she's my first, what do we call these people? Influencers?
Whatever you want. Just someone who's impacted you in some way, maybe shaped the person you are, that kind of thing, really.
Yeah. Well, number one on my list, Margaret Reed. So, you know, why is sorry, let me get rid of this. Why is she on the list? It's on the list because for two reasons, right? One is who she was and how those values affected me, and the other was what she's taught me, right? So on the first one, she was really a remarkable woman. She brought up my father on her own because my father's father, my grandfather, just wasn't present for various reasons. But in the process of doing this, and this was during the war years, right, having been effectively abandoned by my father's father, she not only brought up her son, my father, I think sometimes under quite difficult circumstances. She was a full-time teacher, full-time educator. But on top of that, she was highly, highly political. And she fought 2 by-elections for the Labour Party in the age when, and this is long before the Margaret Thatchers of this world, in the days when it was not seen as necessarily suitable for a woman to fight for a constituency. Now, she never got to be a politician or an MP, but she ran it a very close thing. So she fought, there was a well-known politician who was actually one of Margaret Thatcher's great favourites called Airy Neave, who was later on in life, he was blown up by the IRA next to the Houses of Parliament and was killed. But my grandmother fought him a couple of times and ran him very, very close, which was interesting in the sense that he was a great war hero, and she was fighting seats that were safe, this is in the UK, safe conservative seats against a conservative grandee, and she almost got them, on top of being a full-time mother, on top of being a full-time teacher. So I think, none of this, I mean, in the indulgence of a grandmother to a grandson, right? And she was very indulgent of me in many ways. These are not things that she seeks to impose upon you, but they're things that came through in the kind of character of the woman. So that's sort of one reason I admired her then and admire her now. Now, the other part of it, as I said, was what she brought to me. And she was really my first and quite formative influencer in the modern parlance. I can't think of anyone that's less like a modern-day influencer than my grandmother.
She doesn't take pictures of her food.
Yeah, she doesn't take pictures. She's not on TikTok. But everything she ever gave me was music or books or poetry, right? Mm. That was partly to do with me having an interest in it. It was also partly to do with her being a deeply cultured woman. She lived with her great old dear friend, Helen McCall, who was another educator and was a well-known head teacher in Scotland. And Helen and Margaret, whether in Edinburgh or later in the Isle of Wight, were represented little pockets of intelligentsia. Super cultured women. I think it was more to do with the age to a certain extent. Incredibly well-read, politically highly attuned, and very, very knowledgeable about music in particular. And even today, I have great racks of cassettes, all of which were classical music. So when I remember my grandmother, I remember her not only as a doting person who looked after me when my parents were elsewhere, but as a woman of great fortitude, fantastic work ethic, tremendous values, also quite religious, but of deep, deep culture. And this is the important thing. It's a bit like the Indians kind of wanting to accept you, right? There's knowledge and there's the acceptance or the giving. Mm-hmm. But her great skill and the great gift to me was providing all of this access, right? And I mean, later on we'll get on to the pay it forward bit, but I still maintain to this day that having a grounding in the arts, in culture, all of these, I mean, we used to sit there and listen to Beethoven symphonies, Mozart symphonies, Handel, Brahms, everybody. And having that around you is terribly important. And it also, well, I think it's terribly important. Turning into a kind of pompous old man, but it's. I mean, I'll finish up with Margaret in a second, but there's something about getting this very young. It's like getting anything very young. You could be learning to play golf. You could be learning gardening. But what she gave me in terms of a cultural appreciation at that age, from a young age, right, from the age of about 6, 7, 8, has stood me in tremendous stead. And I certainly value, just in comparison to the modern age, having been brought up in a pre-digital environment, because you simply didn't have the distractions, right? And even though I'm sure I was a fidgety young man like any boys, you could sit happily and listen to a concerto at a house in Edinburgh or the Isle of Wight in a way that I think is much harder now. So for all of those reasons, and I haven't begun to do her justice, Margaret Reed is my number one.
And finally, for this particular compilation, we have Chikudi Iwuji. Having Chikudi on my show was a bit surreal, to be honest. It was only my first season. And here I was with this kind of film star, television star, you know, as actor, Shakespearean actor as well. And yeah, I don't know why. I think I didn't feel intimidated at all because he's so lovely, and so lovely to talk to. So although it was, I don't know, quite a moment for me to interview him, I just felt so completely relaxed and happy. And he goes on in his verse to talk about his parents, Eleazar and Dorothy. He doesn't mention them by name, but you'll come to hear how he talks about them. And which now led to me, or has led to me, meeting his dad, Eleazar, who's going to appear in season 3. So, which I'm very excited about, because not often you get to interview someone who's 97. So you can look forward to that in season 3. In the meantime, here's Chikudi. So, all right, okay. Well, let's get into it then. Let's talk about the first one on your list.
The first one, and this is going to be a bit cheeky because I've definitely cheated. My parents, and I grouped them as one very deliberately, not to diminish either one, but because I realized growing up they were such a unit, and I couldn't separate where the best advice in my life came from, which one, and I can't separate where the human being I would like to be more like came from, because they were a unit. And I realized even in my marriage, and it took me a while to get married, not because I was overly enjoying the bachelor's life, but because I had a true sense of what I believed a partnership could be through then. And unless I had the instinct that this might be in its own version, not the same marriage, in its own version, that kind of rock solid partnership, then it didn't make sense to me to enter it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so they formed what for me is family. They formed what for me was marriage. They formed what was was morals. Now, my parents were very religious, are very religious. You know, my mom sadly passed away in 2009 from cancer, and I miss her every day to this day. But I'm more spiritual than religious. I do believe in a God in us, a God, whatever, but I've never been able to attach to any denomination or any fully. But they did. And I valued that because I saw what it meant to them, what it means to my dad still, and how it shaped them as people. So that moral code, that generosity, my dad always said, I think it was his grandfather said, you'll be the tree. There's a certain tree in my culture, I forget the name and I don't want to get it wrong. But there's a tree the branches are so wide that all the birds come and perch on it. That's what they wanted to be, to help. And so I had the parenting, and some of the parenting, as you grow up, you're like, I'm not sure about that. I certainly wouldn't do certain things the way they did, but there's a lot that I would. And I know they were doing what they felt was best for us. And you've met my brother. I don't know if you've met my sisters and all, but you will find that this family unit is quite exceptional to the point that people are, we're on WhatsApp every day or whatever. Just, it's one of the things I'm deeply grateful for. So for me, my parents formed this entity that I hope I can get half of what they achieved, not in a material sense, but achieved spiritually, holistically, with their generosity to others, the effect they had on others by being that unit. And that's certainly in this phase, as I have a young baby boy, is something that I feel shaped me and was preparing me to sort of be a father in my own right because of what I learned from them. So I treated as two of them, but I hope you understand how much they're a unit for me.
No, I like that. I think it's like a modeling, isn't it? There's the model. That's what I want.
Yeah.
And a blueprint of how to live. And you when you speak to enough people in this world, some people use their parenting as a kind of kickboard against, and say, right, whatever that was, I'm doing the opposite, and things can flip flat back and forth. You get the overindulged helicopter parent makes the child that's very aloof and standoffish with theirs, and it goes back and forth generationally. But when it's modeled on something that you really aspire to actually replicate, then that's a generational handover.
And I'm not sure I would say replicate, because like I said to you, the forms of parenting that came from a very African,
different age,
whatever age, different period, that would be very different. But I think the core of where it was coming from, that dedication, and the sort of contradictions that, for instance, I'll give an example. You spoke about what I do for a living. I still have the letter to this day, this old airmail. Like, you remember the old blue airmail? But I remember when I was at Yale studying economics and I remember when I decided I was going to become an actor. Now, for the African parents of that generation, and you speak to any artist, that is not something you do. You know what I mean? There are only three professions: a lawyer, doctor, and engineer. Those are the three. And I was heading, I'm at the top of probably the top school on the planet doing economics. There's a path set for me. And I and I finally told them I was going to go to drama school. And to this day, I have packed away that letter they sent me that said, because I thought this is why I break with my parents, and they just said, yes, this comes as a surprise, but we're just so happy you finally found something that you want to do. All we could do was give you all the opportunity in the world. And if you've had that and made this the decision you want, we're going to back you 100%. And that's what parents do. And I hope I can surprise my son, or, in the same way of being able to still have that, to both, my parents in many ways were very rigid, but that flip, that understand, I know it was a combination of initial shock, surprise. I know it was my mom saying, okay, let's think about this. I know it was them thinking about it. Then my dad wrote the letter for both of them. And that's an example of what I mean, is that old school, old world mentality can be there, that I'll probably be shifting away from that. But at the core was the understanding what their role was ultimately.
Yeah.
And making sure that I had that,
Yeah, that they were enabling you to be what you use. You're the best.
Yes.
And also live your life independently of them. And be but connected with them, but just be happy.
Ultimately, they really just, for in the things I agreed with or didn't, their goal was always the same, to genuinely thinking for you to be happy, and
Well, they deserve the top spot. So that was the first compilation of firsts. I really must stop saying the word first. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. But yeah, that I hope you really enjoyed that. I mean, it's just so nice to go back and listen. Like I said, and I don't know, I'm reflecting a lot on these conversations at the moment, and where this podcast is going. And I just couldn't be happier. I'm meeting so many interesting people, And I can't wait to share season 3 with you, which is coming out in early September. But in the meantime, next week, I'm going to be doing some more firsts from a little bit more from season 1 and possibly from season 2. So until then, please take care and I'll see you then. Bye-bye for now.